The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolf, and co-host Keith Campagna.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. We're starting to reopen, so we hope everybody is following by the rules and playing it safe. Hope everybody still is healthy, your teams, your families, and the workers that are now coming back. So hope things continue to go well. But I got a question. I don't know. I assume everyone here has done this, so this is sort of a rhetorical question, that you've saved up for a really long time for something that you wanted. And that could have been a car, a boat, a new home, maybe more practical, a computer, a tablet, maybe a piece of jewelry, something. And then you finally get to that day and you decide to order it. And you place the order and then you wait a little bit more. And then the Amazon or UPS or FedEx truck pulls up and you open the box and you find that it's broken. Well, that's sort of happened to all of us lately. I've been researching and studying and writing about the future, and especially the future of work, for over 20 years. And the future arrived pretty abruptly about 3 months ago. And guess what? It's broken. So that's what we're going to be talking about today on Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. We have got the world's first industrial philosopher, Cristina DiGiacomo, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, that future work arrived and it feels broken, and she has some really specific ideas and approaches. I don't know, I always say specific, but really novel approaches to how we can create a better future now, because if we don't do it now, and if we just wait to see what happens, we're in big doo-doo. So she'll be with us shortly. Keith, what do you got going on?
Yeah, dude. First and foremost, I love it when I hear you say, don't let the shift hit your plan. It still cracks me up a year and a half later. I'm pumped about having my good friend Cristina on the show. She's got so much energy. She's got so much going on. I think she's one of the game changers out there, Ira. You know, it's interesting, like one of my core fundamental rules of life is to have a plan, change a plan. And here we are. Everyone now is kind of settling back to what we want to consider the normal, which is kind of funny how the word normal became this overused word, right? Because no one seems to know what it actually means. But I think that, you know, I was listening to one of our previous guests, Jason Averbook, on one of his webcasts this morning. And it blows my mind. Like, he's curious to find out what other companies are doing as it relates to bringing people back so that they could get back to business as usual. And I kind of feel like that's a head in the sand kind of thing. I don't know if business is going back to business as usual. I think that I kind of feel like, Ira, if a company doesn't address working from home, employee engagement, employee something or other, I don't know the answer. I think that they're going to lose employees because in spite of the market being as unstable as it is, or maybe not unstable, but kind of recovering, I think people are going to still make choices where they're going to work. So I think that we're going to watch. Now's the time for human resources to shine, business leaders and business executives to do their job and lead. And so we will see, I guess, how things turn out. I'm really curious to find out what our wonderful guest is going to think about, what she thinks about all that too.
No, absolutely, and having a philosopher approach to this, I know at one time, certainly, and I went to college a long, long time ago. But if you were a philosophy major, the question is, what are you going to do when you grow up? And then, I actually, when I went to dental school, for those who didn't know, my first career, there was a good friend of mine. He had his degree. He had his degree in philosophy, and it was interesting because what was he doing in a medical profession? What was he doing in dentistry? And the school selected him because they were looking for a broader approach than people who were just biology and chemistry majors. But now it's really, we're, again, especially with the way you approach, your approach and the way we need to approach, with life-work integration, beyond balance, having a more holistic approach to life that for years, my generation and the generation before that grew up, we lived to work. That was our gift to mankind. We lived to work. And that model's not going to work anymore. So I agree with you. There is so much going on. You even started by saying that we're settling back to normal, or that's what people think. And one is, I don't think we can settle. Number one, if you look at just the social issues going on, I don't think anybody's going to settle for going back to normal, or settle for anything anymore. And it's going to be a whole new way of living and working. Yeah. So as I was saying, is that I don't think we can settle anymore for anything. I think we've got a long way to go. At best, I think it's going to be business as unusual for a while till we all work it out. And it's pretty fragile. All we need is another wave, or, frankly, we're going to hurricane season. We're going to have flu season. We hit the political rate. There's so many things that can disrupt our path of what normal is. And for anybody thinks that we're going to go back or settle, it's pretty scary. So with that, we're going to bring on Cristina DiGiacomo, who is the world's first industrial philosopher. So tell us a little bit about that, Cristina.
Hi, guys. So nice to be here. And I am absolutely happy to tell you about what industrial philosophy is all about. Essentially, what I do is I help CEOs and entrepreneurs and executives learn how to think about things in the right way. Teaching them how to think differently about their business challenges and their organizations so that they can find new solutions and their companies can thrive. And I do that by teaching them the ideas and concepts of the greatest thinkers of all time. And, the whole idea behind industrial philosophy is just applying principles and virtues and values in the business and working context for the benefit of the individual in an organization and the leadership as a whole. I started this because I was really passionate about philosophy and I was applying it in my work as an executive. I have 20-year career experience as an executive, and I was using philosophy to help me manage people and deal with obstacles and come up with new ideas. And so eventually I then decided, you know what, there needs to be a new category. There needs to be a new avenue for philosophy. And I believe that the working world is a wonderful avenue and vehicle for it. And that's why I created industrial philosophy. And that's what I do.
Yeah, I was going to say, people ask me, when I grew up, and you heard me talk about it a little bit earlier, I somewhere in the fifth grade, I decided I was going to be a dentist. And then I actually pursued that and became one. And then I loved everything about dentistry and left. But part of that is people will say, what do you want to grow up to be when you grow up? And was philosophy always in your life? Was that something that when somebody's, as a kid or even as a young adult said, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Is I want to be a philosopher?
So I was absolutely the kid that kept asking why.
That's a good start.
I think I drove my parents crazy, seriously, because it was always like, why is it that way? Or why are these things this way? And I was never satisfied with the answer until I felt like I could no longer ask why. And so I was just like that as a kid. And, but it wasn't until, later on in my adult life that I started to get really into the way the mind works, the way people perceive the world, the way they perceive themselves. And I was asking some really big questions of myself and the world. And then I just started to pursue philosophy in my personal life and take courses in philosophy about 9 or 10 years ago and make it a more formalized study.
Well, I love the fact that you talk about, asking why, because I've, one of the things and we haven't talked a lot, but, my business really focuses on employee assessment, leadership assessment, pre-employment, finding the right people. But one of the things that we've been measuring for a while, which I found critically important, especially for management, leadership, sales roles, professional roles, is curiosity. And we've had Diane Hamilton on the show. She has the Curiosity Index, Curiosity Code Index. She wrote a book on it. She has an assessment. But I've always pursued that. And it's crazy. I mean, and I'm sure you see this, is that it's just crazy how many people don't ask why. They just, you can see that in the news every day. I mean, they read the headlines, they take for granted, the whole thing about fake news. I mean, people just don't ask enough questions. So when somebody calls you, I mean, I'm curious, because in the past, I don't see any executives, I don't see any business people saying, hey, I can get a business coach, or I can call Cristina because she's a philosopher. When people call, why do they call you? Or how do, what's that first conversation like? Why are they reaching out to you?
So I feel that it's really around what they're experiencing. So they know that something isn't right, or they know that something isn't working. Whether they understand yet that philosophy is necessarily the answer, when I first start engaging with someone, it's really meeting them where they are. And they just know that something isn't working, or they're facing a challenge, and they know that they need to start as far upstream in addressing that as possible. So really the people that I work with are the people that aren't necessarily thinking about the execution of a solution just yet. They just know that there's a problem that needs to be defined. And I believe that people are starting to understand and be more educated around how perception, mindset, attitude, asking the right questions, and some people actually are pretty savvy about philosophy to begin with. And so they just are coming with that point of view in mind. Like, I know that there's something wrong. I know the answer lies in redefining the problem, or how I'm approaching it, or how I'm thinking about it. And so for them, philosophy or a philosophical approach is in their minds the right approach. And so the conversation is usually around taking a step back and evaluating, like, what's really going on here? How have you actually thought about this? How have you actually approached it? And usually we discover that no thinking has been involved. No outline of approach has been involved. And there's a lot of work that can be done in that sort of upstream aspect of solving a problem.
And Ira, I want to chime in here because I've known Cristina now for, I think, a year, right? We kind of fell into each other's LinkedIn profile right at the time I was starting LifeWork Integration. And one of the interesting things that one of the common denominators that her and I found early in our relationship was that we're noticing that people who, generally speaking, have been so busy running the status quo, they haven't had the time to look up and see what's going on and what they need to understand so that they could run their business in the next couple of years. And you and I know that we talk about this, in terms of HR's seeming inability to get out of their office and engage other leaders inside of the business, right? And so I've noticed how business leaders, and Cristina, I think this is what you're getting at, it's business leaders are looking for something more than what they've been told works, because it might not be working as well as they've been told. And so, especially with all this craziness, I'm kind of curious, Cristina, here's a question for you. Are you seeing certain trends in terms of what these business leaders that are you're working with, what are they looking for in terms of organizational development or leadership development? Are there common themes that they're lacking?
So the CEO, I want to start with the sort of North Star and kind of back into it from there. The CEO of Unilever recently just put out this quote where he's committed to leading a purpose-driven organization. And his fundamental belief that if your company is driven by purpose, it thrives. And to me, purpose really just equals principles. Purpose just really equals values. And so what I'm seeing in terms of a trend is very high level, well-known CEOs are now starting to shift in understanding what it really means to run a successful company. And the old story of, profit-driven approach, or the old sort of economic model of how you run a company and run your people, that's all shifting. And it is really kind of moving towards that stakeholder capitalism. So the trend that I'm actually seeing is that more leaders are now starting to embrace the idea of people over profits, that principle is profitable, and that actually running a purpose-driven company is the way to go. Now, the question then becomes, well, how do you execute on that? And I think that's where the organizational development piece comes in and the HR piece comes in, where you have to have partners that are willing to not only embrace this new model, but work with it, execute on it, and then maybe sometimes even circle back and keep leadership in check and on strategy with those kinds of things. So I think what's lacking right now is a plan and a roadmap to usher this shift and new narrative around how companies should now be run. And I think there's a huge opportunity for all of us working in this space to be able to do that, including myself and yourself and HR and organizational development people and organizational change management people, and also the agile community to some extent as well.
The agile community. There's an interesting comment, right? Who's actually capable of being agile in HR? And maybe you're not spending time. Maybe I'm overreaching here, but are you spending more time with executives that are inside or outside of HR?
Outside.
Yeah.
Outside of HR.
Isn't that something? So then, I actually want to take a step back because I want to talk about your recent book as well. And me, I'm in the presence right now of two book writers and still trying to figure out how I could get to that point. Tell us a little bit about what your book, Wise Up at Work, is about, and how you see that playing a role with the new philosophies of that business leaders need.
So my intention and my mission with Wise Up at Work was to give people an introduction to how to have a better relationship with their thoughts so that they could have peace of mind and work more seamlessly. And it's written with the leader in mind, thinking about all the challenges that they come across every day. Everything from, they've got maybe an adversarial relationship with a colleague to, they're completely overwhelmed and having a hard time, finding the time to lead and to ask those big questions. And so essentially the book is just an introduction on how to be a wiser person so that you can work better. And what I do is I teach how to have more clarity. So in other words, are you really seeing what's there? Are you working with what's true? And then teaching how your thoughts work. And are you spending more time and thoughts about the work and ruminating and about that last meeting, or are you spending time in productive thoughts? And then how are you making decisions? What are you basing your decisions on? Are they out of, for the good of everyone involved, or are they fear-based decisions? And then finally, I get into how action really happens. So, a lot of people think that philosophy, you just sit and think all the time. That's actually not true. Philosophy encourages us to engage with the world. And I believe that it's a protocol for engaging with the world. And so in terms of teaching people how to, have the right action, how to know when to actually not act may be the best way to move forward. So it's really around these 4 aspects of being a wise person and giving people an introduction to that. And that philosophy can help you engage with your work, engage with your people, and engage with your organization in a much clearer frame of mind.
So look, I guess let me challenge a little bit, and maybe it's not even a challenge. Maybe it's just trying to figure out, that there are certainly CEOs that you've identified and that we know that truly do want to have a purposeful, mindful organization. They have a strong set of values, and maybe they weren't communicating improperly before, or they just need to, they're trying to figure out what their place is moving forward. But there's still, I still hear and see this whole other, style of leadership, if it's even a style, that I can see that, I'm the CEO and I call you up and I say, yeah, I get it. That's exactly what we need, Cristina. Can you come in and talk to our people? Where do you go with that? Do you walk? Is that just, hey, that's just not a good client for me? Or how do we help people who have the mentality of, hey, so you're going to come in and we're all going to sit around in a lotus position for an hour and we'll be in touch with one another. And you're going to give us a breathing exercise and we'll be good. We'll be good because now my employees will understand that I'm really serious about this. So, but before you answer that, we're going to take a break because I don't want to interrupt you in there because that was a lot. There was a big question there, but that's what we're going to come back to. So you have been listening to the Geeks, Geezers and Googlization show. We're here again with my co-host, Keith Campagna, and our guest today is the world's first industrial philosopher. We're talking with Cristina DiGiacomo. And we will be right back after hearing from our sponsors, Zor.ai and Success Performance Solutions. So stay right where you are, and we'll be back in less than 2 minutes. Hi everyone, this is Ira Wolf, author of Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. I'm excited to announce that my online course, Recruitment Marketing for the Accidental Recruiter, is open for business. This course is the culmination of a 2-year-long project and releases recruiting tips I've learned after hundreds of hours of research, speaking with thousands of conference attendees, and interviews with dozens of experts. It's all available to you in Recruitment Marketing for the Accidental Recruiter. To receive more information or get started, visit our website at www.successperformancesolutions.com and click on the tab, Recruitment Marketing for the Accidental Recruiter.
Imagine how your company would grow if your candidate experience earned a 99% approval rating. Well, to get to 99%, you need the 3 best letters in recruitment technology, XOR. Zoar's text bots, chat bots, and audio bots increased IKEA's candidate conversion rate 455%. Zoar decreases candidate drop-off rates, improves your candidate experience, and collects analytics for future strategies. To learn more, check out Zoar.ai. That's XOR.ai.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks Geezers and Googlization show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf. I'm with Keith Campagna, and we got Cristina DiGiacomo. And I loaded up a whole lot of questions right before the break. And but just to give you a refresher, I was just saying that when we're talking about philosophy, we're talking about purposeful leadership and values and really basically going back to kind of walking the talk. I mean, just having an organization that's in tune with the people and helping meet the needs of not only the employees, but the customers and the community and society. And then I still got this vision in my head that sees the CEO picking up the phone and going, yeah, that's what we need. We need to get everybody motivated and inspired, and we got to get people back in the mood and on board and back to this new normal, or I don't know if it's back to the new normal or into the new normal. Again, so, you could come in and you got an hour to fix us. What are you going to do? Am I wrong? First of all, am I wrong? And second of all, when you get assuming you get calls like that, where do you go? Because I think that's the real problem. I think people that get it are, looking for guidance. But there's a lot of people that this was a huge wake up call the last few months that things need to be different.
So my first inclination, if I were to ever get a call like that,
I can send a lot of people to you. That's fine. I guess for me, I would just ask them, what's the rush? Like I would ask them to talk to me a little bit more about their own sort of ideas and vision and belief system around this whole thing. And I would also ask them or talk to them around, their place in this whole thing, because it matters. And it's not something that it can be easily just outsourced and you check the box and that's it. And then I would just really kind of ask them if you want to go about it in this way, have you been doing it this way for a long time? Have you been approaching change in this way for a long time? If so, how's that been working for you? And so honestly, when I get into engagement, for lack of a better term, my filter is, can they answer some deep questions about where they are and what they think is actually going on? And that's how I would address that kind of phone call. And those that are actually willing to take a step back and say, hey, you know what, actually, let me really think about this for a second. With the idea and the notion of like, look, if you don't take a minute and take a beat to really think about this and your role in it and how this is going to play out, it's not going to play out the way you want. And if I know CEOs, they really, really like to know how things are going to play out. And I can almost guarantee if they're laissez-faire about it or hands-off about it, it's not going to play out the way they want. It's not going to be a sustainable solution, and it's not going to be fully integrated, or the outcomes that they're expecting aren't going to be the outcomes that they get. So,
I think I think that just speaks to the whole lipstick on a pig thing that companies have been getting by with, maybe in the past. And, it's curious for a guy like me, right, Ira, because you and I I distinctively remember being at one of your, as I was building my groupie status with you, I was at one of your half-day sessions, and we joked because there were like 60 HR professionals, practitioners in the room, and the joke when everyone left was, how many do you think are actually going to put some sort of actionable step into recruiting more efficiently? And between me, you, and the woman that will remain nameless, the answer was maybe one, right? And then I started doing life work integration, and now I'm standing in front of a room of 40, 50 CFOs. Maybe another event, I'm speaking in front of 100, business owners, small business leaders. And I often wonder if 5 out of 100 people are going to be motivated to actually doing the work that needs to be done so that they can have employees that are more integrated with the way that they view their workload and their life load, more agile, more empathetic, all of the things that I know Cristina evangelizes and helps people build out within themselves and their organizations. But it really does sound like it's much harder. It was much harder to get people to actually do the work. And I guess I'm right there with you, Ira. I wonder if any of that's going to change.
So, and we're both a bit skeptical because we've been there, and maybe it's because we're working within HR, and unfortunately, there's a lot of really, really good people, but there's a lot of conversation, but they don't always have the decision to the power to make those decisions. But going back to Cristina, I know. So we're at this point. This is literally an existential moment for many companies, not only for retail and hospitality, but also for manufacturing and distribution. Almost any company, that they have to look at the future of work differently than they did. And you in one of the emails that you sent out, I don't know if I'm going to word this properly or exactly, but it sort of said, now is the time that we have to, that people have to figure out what the future of work means. What did you mean by that?
So thank you, Ira. I was dying for you to ask this question because when you first broached the subject with me, I had some pretty strong feelings about this. Look, just to preface, I'm not a future of work conference organizer. I'm not, Ira, you are way more embedded in this whole topic than I am. So, but I can only speak as someone who has been exposed to the narrative around future of work for like 10 years now. So like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, the narrative that I was exposed to and marketed to was, the future of work is mostly through a technological lens. Mm-hmm. It's, digitizing or, digital transformation, organizational digital transformation, artificial intelligence, automation, and so on. All worthy things. All love the future casters. Love it. However, there was something really important going on that everyone was missing. And the future of work was not addressing the necessary fundamental changes to actually make a working system that worked for everyone. And so when everything happened with COVID and, the whole George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement and diversity and inclusion conversation, all of this is now really exposed these cracks in the system and this breakdown of work, and everyone has been exposed to it. And I feel that the people who were talking 10 years ago, 5 years ago about the future of work were not talking about gender parity, income parity, racial parity, making equitable systems, cultures that worked. And maybe they were to some extent, but that was certainly not what I was exposed to. And so from a philosophical perspective, the future of work needs to be redefined now, because I think that it's about fixing the things that need fixing right now. And to a larger extent, the future of work narrative should have been that all along, or else we wouldn't have been in such dire straits. Philosophically, all the future is it's an expression of what we do now, right? It's the outcome of all the things that we are doing now, and that's what the future is. So if we want a better future, we need a better now. And, to what end does it serve to talk about the future of work without talking about making stakeholder capital a reality, making the current system work better, increasing employee engagement, just making things better for everyone? And so that's what I think the future of work conversation should be about. And I love the AI folks and the tech folks and all of that. We can't get to that future that they're talking about until we deal with the really critical issues that we're experiencing right now.
Well, we could get there. It just happens to be the dystopian view of the future, and that's where a lot of those conversations came out, where, having AI and machines and robotics and, whatever it was saying, hey, this could be our future. These are the tools that we use in the future without any consideration to all the consequences or the collateral damage, short of people being out of jobs. And then, there's the whole singularity approach that says, well, if you have all this automation, then we can have this world of abundance that we don't have to worry about the production of food and clean water and clean air, because technology will take care of that. And then as human beings, we'll have 100% of our time that we can just enjoy life. We don't really have to work as hard, because half the time we're working to pay taxes and fixing stuff. So if we only have to work a half or a third of the time, then that's sort of that ideal world. Or idyllic. I don't know if it's an ideal world, but it was sort of their idyllic world. But the problem is getting there. And the approach was that nobody was really considering the human side of that. And I think that was starting to change a little bit. I had a talk last year at the SHRM group, and the title of my presentation was Keeping the H in HR, Keeping the Human in HR. And everybody thought about it, oh, you think technology's bad. And it was like, no, you use technology to make your life better. But the reality is you needed to make your life better and not outsource it to technology. So, I came up with I don't know if anybody else did, but I started to talk about the humanization of work. And there's a lot, and Keith, you influenced me a little bit of the importance, and we had a lot of talk. So the good news is, I guess, the future of work, what your approach to it is, I expect, Christina, is going to be in huge demand as companies really struggle with this, and taking aside the people that think you can come in and fix it, that it's a strategy, or can you sell me some posters that have the right sayings on the wall and we'll put them up. The people that are really serious about moving forward, kind of, pretty interesting. So what are some of the other components of this? So, there's a lot of talk going on. It used to be, just months ago, we were talking about employee engagement. Now it's about the employee experience. What are some of the other components to this? What are some of the kind of the strategies, once people do have a focus and they're aligned, truly in line with where they need to move? What are some of the steps that companies are taking, or how do you help them?
Steps companies are taking in terms of employee experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a buzzword at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a buzzword. I'm going to get a little feisty, but the whole idea of employee experience and employee engagement, absolutely worthy intention. However, the employees did not have really, truly a say in what that was. So, you're thinking about employee experience or employee engagement programs with maybe at best, some sort of quantitative yearly survey. And I believe that the success of a leader or an organization from an employee experience perspective has to be based on a true conversation with the employees where they are actively involved in creating their own experience. Like, how could you have employee experience programs without the employees actually weighing in? And what we're seeing right now is with employee activism specifically, where employees are walking out, where they're being very vocal about flexible work. Like, we don't care about the foosball table in the other room. We want to be able to spend more time with our families. And organizations, some are doing a good job, but some are being really clumsy about it, because they're just coming at it from like, this is the department thinks that this is the HR department, and our leadership thinks, okay, these are the things that we think will work. And they're just not including the actual employees in helping to develop the programs that work best for them. And I also feel that in terms of receiving people back into the workforce from a post-pandemic perspective, any leader or organization that does not acknowledge the mentality or the psyche or the needs of people returning is going to have a very serious problem. And they're going to expect 0% retention. People are not going to want to work for an organization that doesn't do the return, what I call the great return, properly. And so you're going to start seeing employees actually be more engaged in their own employee experience versus the other way around.
And there's you don't need to apologize for being feisty, because you're absolutely right. I mean, it's that I've seen this transition, and this was starting to happen before, before the pandemic. And, that all of a sudden was, oh, no, it's not employee engagement. We have employee engagement's bad, but it's more important to talk about employee experience. It was like, okay, let's replace the poster on the wall, with this. And the pandemic, I think there's a silver, not that there's many silver linings in this pandemic, but one of them might be that it was really the wake-up call where companies, and it's not just management, but we're all companies, all organizations, because that goes to nonprofits as well, need to really start thinking about their volunteers and the people and the community, of what, what's the experience, right? It's not a one view lens, and so I'm with you on that.
Can I just be humorous for a second, because it's so typical. It's so typical of the sort of, I don't even know what to call it, like the community or the way things are, to let's just change the way we call something, what we call something, and then let's create another jargony word that further distances from the original idea of what this thing is all about, and then create shiny things around this new jargony word and call it a day. And that's exactly my beef with, we were just starting to gain momentum around employee engagement, the whole idea of engagement. Yes, love it. But now it's employee experience. So now everybody has to transition over to whatever new paradigm this employee experience is, just when we were starting to gain momentum. And I've seen so many iterations of the same thing. And each iteration becomes further and further and further removed and less actionable than the original idea. So
yes. But as you're talking there, I'm laughing. This is where video would come in. I'm just smiling because I can see where they used to do employee surveys, and then they became, they're employee engagement surveys, and we do them once a year, and then they go, no, you need to do them more often, and then they became, quarterly, and then all of a sudden it's like, we did that for like 3 years and nothing changed, so let's try employee experience now. And it's like, okay, how are you going to measure it? How are you going to implement it? And what difference does it make if you don't change the way you lead and you don't change the way you treat people? And so I'm with you. And you and I can go on forever. We knew that from our email the other day, Cristina. Unfortunately, we told you this would go really, really fast, and it did. We've just got a few minutes late. So how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way? And we'll go from there.
So the best way to learn more about what I do and to reach out to me is go to my website, MorAlchemy.com. It's MorAlchemy.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. I love connecting with people. And also I have a book in Amazon called Wise Up at Work. So you can go ahead and check it out. And if you go to my website, you can sign up to get a free excerpt of the book. So you can learn more about industrial philosophy and applying philosophy for the workplace.
Outstanding. And you and I are definitely going to have a conversation after this. There's too many paths we're on together. Final words. What's your final piece of advice for our listeners?
So my piece of advice, or just my feeling, is we have an opportunity to really do things the right way, to think about how we do things, question what wasn't working, being honest about what wasn't working, and having the opportunity to approach things and change in a different way that works for everyone. And I really believe that. And so that's what I'd like to leave people with.
And I think those three words, works for everyone. I think, that needs to be the approach moving forward. Hey, we had a ball and great conversation. Sorry initially about a little rough entry there for some sound reasons, technology reasons, but we're here. Great conversation, and I really appreciate it. Continued success, Cristina.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you, Keith. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time. Talk soon. Whew.
So Keith,
something's got to give out there, right?
No, it's given. It's given. I think we're going to see the shift hit a lot of plans. So I said earlier, I think it's an existential moment for a lot of companies, and you see companies bailing on it now. They're just not. Some financially don't have it. Some they just don't have the wherewithal, the passion to make this change.
Yep.
So
and I'll say, I guess I'll save it for another time.
Yeah, we're coming up at the end here. So you've been listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. We had a great guest today, Cristina DiGiacomo. We're talking about the future of work was broken. A couple other things tomorrow. I had a whole bunch of announcements, but I'll hold that for another time as well. But tomorrow, I'm actually co-sponsoring with JobSync a webinar. It's called Leveraging Facebook in a COVID World for Recruitment. Even if you want to learn how to use Facebook for your business, it's at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. It's free. And to get that and the other webinars that I'm doing, you can go to bit.ly, it's bit.ly/SPS webinars 0620. That was the shortest one I can get. So it's bit.ly/SPS webinars 0620. Keith, final word.
Read the book, get out there. It's not that hard to make change, especially now because everything is a little bit disheveled. So take the opportunity now to get a little bit outside your comfort zone, no matter your rank and file in your organization, and just move towards the thing that feels better.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about it next week.
Yeah, read two books. Wise Up at Work and Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. So, hey, thanks again to Zor.ai and Success Performance Solutions. Don't forget, we're on the air every week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY.com, or you can listen on any of your favorite podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, you name it, we're there. So until next week, the next episode of Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization, this is Ira Wolf and Keith Compagna. Don't let the shift hit your plans.